In this lesson, we'll unwrap the binoculars, so let's start with checking if our model is ready for unwrapping. I decided to go with one material for the whole model because that's what I'm usually doing, and we'll create a few textures to paint the base and then the details, but all in the one material. For your next creations, you can decide if you want to use one or separate materials. You can also unwrap the model and then add separate materials to the metal, wood and glass. It's totally up to you. Next, modifiers. You can see that I intentionally left the mirror modifier on the body, which will be made from wood, and the metal parts, because our model is symmetrical, so I can paint only one half. If you want to have unique textures on both parts, then you need to accept the mirror modifier. The only part of the model I apply the mirror modifier to is this top part, because it might be too obvious that the texture is mirrored. I will leave the smooth by angle modifiers as they're not messing with the look of the UVs and my mesh. Other than that, I don't have any modifiers that change my geometry, so we can check other things. I named all the parts too, just in case. With a small model like this, it won't make a difference, but with complicated ones, it will definitely help. Next, I separated all the parts that I can isolate and paint separately, for example these wooden parts. They're still named properly, but thanks to that I'll be able to paint below without distorting the brush stroke. Of course, you can also leave them connected and then just hide them during painting, so it's also up to you. Last thing, checking scale of the object. Everything is fine, and we can start unwrapping. Before I place the first seam, I will create a grid texture to help me visualize how the texture will look, and it will be definitely easier to spot any stretching or areas I need to correct. I will start with the metal parts and the buckle, then I will unwrap the wooden parts, and lastly the bolt and glass pieces. I will be switching between the solid view and material view a lot because, as you can see, this texture is great for seeing if the UVs are correct, but definitely not for unwrapping. Too much colors and it's too distracting. For the metal parts, I am selecting all the hard edges because it's the best place to have seams. For easily selecting the parts of the mesh separated by the seam, we can press Ctrl L or L if our cursor is above the part we want to select. The UV is distorted, so we need to add more seams. I'm checking which islands need more of them. I am selecting the parts I already created UVs for, and I'm inverting the selections with Ctrl I to move it out of the UV space. For me, it's easier to work with a few chunks of UVs only. I found an edge causing the stretching, so let's place the seam here too. After adding a missing seam, the UVs look better, but we definitely need to do something with those distorted circles, so let's select them, and we see that they definitely have to be cut somewhere because the distortion is too big. I will place the seams in the places where they won't be visible, so for the middle part it will be at the top, and for the outside part I will mark them at the bottom. While marking seams, you need to think about their visibility, especially if you want to texture them in a different program. Now they're nice and straight, but I will try to straighten this one island more using the Align Vertically tool. It allows me to select the edge and straighten it. But as you can see, I forgot to turn off the UV sync selections with edges and something weird happened, so I need to turn it off, and now I can align these edges. I'm also scaling them a little bit to make the nice shape. And now the UVs are looking good, no distortions. I decided to correct this outside part too. I'm thinking about scaling this part, but it would be too much work to straighten up all the horizontal edges. So I will use follow active quads instead, but you can see that I already unwrapped it and it's not changing, so I will reset the UVs and do it again. And now it's working fine, but the island is huge, so I need to scale it down. It is also stretched, so I need to scale it in the x-axis to make the texture grid look as square as possible. The rest is okay, so I will go to the back now and repeat those steps again. So marking seams on the hard edges, unwrapping. This time I move these islands out of the UV space. And I just discovered that screencast keys did not show up in the UV editing tab, so from now on, you will see what I'm pressing. Here I'm doing the same thing as with the previous part, so follow active quads, and we can see that the different options are not making any difference, so I'll just leave it as it is. As you can see, all the islands after using follow active quads need some rescaling, so let's do it again. Making the grid square so we don't have any texture stretching. We can definitely eyeball it, textures will look okay. Moving on to another part. I had to switch to the solid shading mode because I had no idea where I was placing seams. And here I see that I totally forgot to separate the back glass, so well, let's do it now. I will also join it with the second glass part and I can go back to the metal part. Keeping the not unwrapped island somewhere else is a good reminder that something was left and we need to unwrap it. And for now, it doesn't matter where all the islands are. We'll pack everything later. These UVs are distorted more because the edges are longer, so you can see that it started to overlap itself, but we'll just cut some more seams and everything is fine now. I think I will use follow active quads for this island too, so let's reset it and then we'll repeat the process with scaling this island to make the grid nice and square. And for this part, I will do the same. First, unwrap it, but I don't really like this curved UVs, so I want them to be straight. And I'm resetting the UVs and using follow active quads again and rescaling the island. We don't need to worry to have a grid with the same density everywhere, because we'll use average island scale in a few minutes. And the last quick check if the main parts are okay. And everything seems nice right now, so we can select another part for unwrapping. I think I will do this chain piece next, so for this part I will hide the seam in the middle, but a little bit lower. Changing the method is not doing anything, so we need to put another seam. You can see how stretched it is in the material view. For models like that, we need to place one seam across the model to unfold it. And there's always one question, where to put the seam. I decided to put it on the lower right side as it's not the place that someone will be staring at, and after unwrapping it looks decent. Next up, this little bead. Just selecting it and unwrapping. When modeling, I deleted all the back faces so we don't see it, and it's also a good way to save some UV space. I think I will use follow active quads for this island too. I used it for the rest, so to not make this island alone, let's unwrap it and rescale it again. Now I'm finally using average island scale option and we can see that the UVs are uniform and we should definitely be able to paint on them. I will also pack the islands. I will uncheck rotation and use 0.009 for the margin, a little bit more than the standard value, but it will help with painting, so we'll be sure that we won't accidentally paint on the other island. I know I'm not packing the whole mesh, but I like to have a nice and tidy UVs, and that's also an indicator that I finished them, so this step is not necessary. Now the last part, metal buckle. I am often using the period on my numpad and it helps to zoom into selection. Here I will also try to hide the seams, so I will place one seam around the shape and then two more around this bottom part to separate it. And one more seam along the shape, and we see that this UV is definitely not right. I will select the opposite edge and mark the seam, and now the UVs are looking better. With this little part, I will basically place seams on every hard edge here. The UV looks like it wants to fly away, so I'm sorry, but we need to put some more seams. This little square won't be even visible, so we can just put as many seams as we need. It's looking okay, so now we need to unwrap this big part of the buckle. I need to place another seam across this part too, so I'm looking for a good spot that is not really visible. That's why I left the isolate view. I think this edge will be okay, so let's unwrap it. I'm trying different methods here, but I will stay with angle based because the conformal makes the UVs look weird. I will also mark another seam at the top because the texture is stretched. Let's unwrap everything, and I think it will work. Well, funny shapes, but they look okay. I will use average island scale again and then go out of the isolate view and select every metal part and use average island scale again because now we need to average all of them and pack them to see if everything is alright. And it is, everything is looking fine, so we can proceed to unwrapping the wooden parts. And remember that it is not the final packing. You don't have to do that, but I think it helps to organize the work better. This part will be extremely easy. First, I will isolate the view and take a look how many parts do I have here. I will start with the main parts and put one seam on the bottom. And like with the middle parts, I will use follow active quads again. You can definitely see that it is a repetitive process. Rescaling the island again and placing the seam on the back part and doing exactly the same thing. Depending on the island rotation, we need to scale them in the X or Y axis. I started to use 1, 2 and 3 to switch between vertices, edges and faces. This way we don't need to move our cursor far away to click the buttons. Now these side parts, also very simple. We can just select the hard edges again and just unwrap. The same with the top part. I removed the faces that are vanishing into the binoculars body, so we need just 4 seams. Looks decent, so let's check everything real quick. Everything seems to look fine, and again we can select everything and use average island scale. And pack everything, but remember that it's not necessary. I need to put 0.009 again because it magically disappeared, and deselect rotation. Everything looks fine to me. I will now turn off the wooden parts we unwrapped a moment ago from the view and isolate the leather belt. This part is a little bit tricky because it's a one mesh and no matter where we put the seams, they will be visible. But I decided to put them on the bottom of the longer part you can see in front. And I also put seams to these little rectangles too. Selecting the top part and using follow active quads again. You can see that when I'm moving one island, the second is moving too. It's because I accidentally pressed O for proportional editing, so I turned it off. Sometimes it happens and it's not a big deal. Now the second part of the belt, doing exactly the same thing. And don't forget about the little rectangles, so I will select the big parts and then invert the selection. Average island scale again, and packing all islands again. After packing, we see that the texture size is definitely not right and we won't be able to paint any details on it, so we need to cut it more. I'm checking where I can hide the seams and I can definitely place them on the sides where they are connected to the chain element. I'm also pressing Z to switch between shading modes. It's definitely quicker, but both methods are working. I see that this part of the belt is definitely not in the right place, so I will use proportional editing to move it a little bit. I'm making small corrections to the mesh because the bead is not visible as I would want it. It's totally normal to make corrections like this during unwrapping. After placing the seams on the sides, it's still not enough. And yes, proportional editing again. And I need to place more seams. I'm packing islands again. And the grid size is still too big, so unfortunately I need to place the seams in the visible locations and across the mesh, but it's better to have bigger textile density rather than no seams. Let's try with one in the middle of this part. I will move the islands to see if that will work and pack them again. But I don't think so. I will remove the seam and place two on the curves and see if that will be enough. Sometimes it's trial and error until we find a solution. Maybe not the prettiest, but at least working. Now let's pack it again, and it's definitely better. There is a tiny bit of stretching caused by fallout active quads, but I don't think that it will cause any problems. And we're checking the scale of the texture on the belt only, but as it is the longest part out of all binoculars elements, the rest would be very small in comparison and we would have a lot of unused UV space left after packing. Let's check if everything is okay and we can go to the last part. This will be a speed unwrapping because I will just go into edit mode and press unwrap. I told you unwrapping is easy. Let's check if everything is fine and we can proceed to packing everything. So to pack everything, I will select my whole mesh and use average island scale again. And unwrapping with similar options as last times. I don't want rotation, so I will deselect it. I don't know why, but I prefer when islands are placed horizontally or vertically, no diagonals. UV is looking okay, and I'm wondering if I should correct these two parts, but I think we're good to go. Textile density looks good too, and I think we can paint on 1K texture. And well, it's the end of unwrapping. Remember that you don't have to follow me exactly, and if you find a better spot to place the seam, then do it, and don't be afraid to experiment a bit.